There were the constant non-stop LZ and PZ missions going back and forth to the poles, at the base camps where we would refuel. Now and then we would get separate medevac missions as all the medevac helicopters were either busy or shot down. During all of this back and forth, some of our helicopters were shot down and crew members killed and wounded. But the ones who took the brunt of all this violence was the infantry on the ground. Sometimes the NVA-VC would shoot like heck at the helicopters as we came into the LZ, but sometimes they would lay in wait for the infantry until all the helicopters flew away. Then the NVA-VC would make an all-powerful assault on the poor guys that we just inserted and kill and wound many. Then the enemy would soon melt into the countryside and disappear without a trace. No one had time to call in airstrikes or artillery even if they could. Many times operations were done outside of any artillery strike capabilities, and jet airstrikes would take an hour to get there. Gunships might arrive in 40 minutes. Vietnam was a very busy place. We never had enough on-time backup for any kind of battle that could ensue at anywhere at any time in our areas. To many of us veterans, any battle operations were hopeless from the beginning. This was 1968. The Army had at least 3 years to clear some of these problems up, but things were just getting worse and worse. The enemy was always way ahead of us in their tactical battle plans. Sure, some of them were getting killed, but 1968 was brutal to our fighting guys. Anytime our flight started to fly close to the ground in any area that we worked in, we received fire. This would tell even an idiot that things were not good. One first lift LZ that we flew into with 10 choppers, we started to shoot up both sides of the LZ with our M60S. Once the infantry guys in my helicopter jumped out, they, instead of hitting the ground and ducking so I could keep firing my M60 over their heads, they ran right in front of me toward the tree line. I had to stop shooting as I would have hit them in the back if I continued firing. Somehow our LZ procedure became rather confused. One could always expect something to go wrong and to make corrections immediately in life and death situations. Improvisation counts big time in direct combat situations. Maybe their lieutenant before the flight told them to run toward the tree line when they jumped out of the choppers today. I don't know. Anyway, at the same time that they jumped out and started to run to the tree line, an NVA jumped up right in front of me from a spider hole about 10 steps away with his hands above his head. I couldn't believe it. But there he was. We were looking directly in each other's eyes. He was scared and I was surprised. My M60 was pointing directly at his head. There was no way I was going to shoot him. He could have thrown a grenade or two on the helicopter or shot up the whole crew from where he was concealed in the 3-foot grass. But he didn't. I was immediately thankful to him for that. To me, he was my immediate friend. He must have come up from a spider hole, otherwise I think the infantry guys would have tripped over him. My right hand was gripping the butterfly handle of the M60 gun with my right trigger finger on the trigger, and my left hand was on the empty C-ration can, thumb on the back and index finger on the front in the usual feed and fire mode. My microphone button was on a cord attached to my helmet. I didn't want to press the microphone button, as that would have taken my hand off the ammo belt feed can, and I never do that in shooting situations. Besides, it would take too long to explain the situation with the NVA standing in front of me. The helicopter started to lift off the ground and the NVA went immediately down his spider hole. As we climbed away and onto our next PZ, I told the AC flying my helicopter that day what had just occurred, and that he might want to warn the infantry there was a spider hole in the clearing that we had just landed them in. The AC, not being the brightest guy in the flight, became angry and told me I should have killed the NVA. The slick pilots just fly the helicopters, and many are usually not so good at that. The crew chief is the mechanic and the gunner on the left side, while the gunner on the right side is just a gunner. The crew chief and gunner do the shooting and the killing if there is any to be done. Killing a guy that is giving up and who was apparently no threat to us was not for me. Besides, he could have killed us all but chose not to. To me, he gave us our lives and I gave him his life in exchange. Also, everything happened in about 3 seconds. There simply was no time to do anything except to shoot or not to shoot. I'm glad I didn't shoot and felt proud of myself for my decision. I never shot at a person that wasn't trying to shoot me or my friends. I never even shot an NVA-VC that I could see. They always shot from camouflaged positions, and I just shot at their gun smoke or muzzle flashes. I don't know if I killed or wounded 30 NVAVC or none in my time in Vietnam so far. I saw a lot of dead GIs, but never a dead NVA. The NVAVC were not stupid, they were experts at camouflage. The NVA that jumped up in front of me was proof of that. The infantry fellows never even seen him, and they were right on top of him. I pretty much told the AC that he could stuff it. Ha! That reminds me of one of my very big complaints about our helicopters flying in formation. I kept hearing over the flight radio communications to close up the flight when we are flying from LZ to PZ or PZ to LZ at 2,000 feet. The message was from our company commander. What an idiot. We have 10 helicopters flying with only a rotor blade distance between helicopters. There was no reason for that, other than some idiots thought it looked nice, much like goose-stepping Nazis on parade. We were certainly not on a parade ground. There were more than a few times that I caught our helicopter straying into another helicopter in formation and had to yell "watch out" on left very loudly. The gunner had to do the same on occasions. The pilots would at times get vertigo and not know that they were about to cause a mid-air collision, killing 20 people on board the helicopters. It could have something to do with pilots drinking way too much back at their officers' club. In my opinion, no one should be allowed to drink at nights before operations, and that meant every night. There was a lot of turbulence in the air that jerked the helicopters around as it was. My gunner and I never drank alcohol back in base camp. I didn't drink as there was too much depending upon my judgment as a mechanic crew chief machine gunner every day. My gunners didn't drink either. If they did, they were not my gunner any longer. It was a constant concern that our own pilots and company commander didn't kill us all. I probably drank about 6 beers at the base camp in my year's tour, and that was when supposedly we were not flying the next day. I also only ate in the mess hall about 10 times the whole year. I preferred C-ration cans of fruit, cheese, crackers, chocolate, coffee, cigarettes, and water. That was my diet. My main object was doing my job as best I could and staying alive at the same time, and that meant doing a thorough job every day, checking all mechanical procedures, changing fluids, cleaning filters, checking and greasing bearings, checking bullet holes, and greasing bearings meant not injecting sand and dirt into the bearings while greasing them. So, in the end, we were not only fighting the NVAVC, whose job it was to kill us, but fighting our own officers' stupidity, whose job was to be responsible but were not. Both senior officers and pilots included. Not all pilots were idiots, just many of them. There were some very good and responsible pilots.